Welcome to Whispered Tales by Joe, where ancient myths, forgotten legends, and timeless stories are brought to life in a way that soothes your mind and guides you into a peaceful slumber. Here, we explore the mysteries of the past, blending history with storytelling to bring you tales that are as thought-provoking as they are calming. In each episode, we journey into the depths of human imagination and history, uncovering stories that have shaped cultures and captivated hearts for centuries. Tonight, we delve into one of the most enduring mysteries of all time, a tale that has fascinated philosophers, explorers, and dreamers alike. Join us as we explore a legend beneath the waves, the tale of the lost city of Atlantis. From the dawn of civilization, myths and legends have served as windows into the values, fears, and dreams of ancient cultures, offering societies a way to make sense of the world, explain the unexplainable, and impart wisdom. Among these timeless tales, the legend of Atlantis stands out, captivating imaginations for over 2 millennia with its grandeur, tragedy, and the profound questions it raises about civilization and power. As we explore the story of Atlantis, we embark on a journey into the heart of human imagination, reflecting on lost worlds and our place in history, inviting you to be drawn into the mystery and wonder that have kept this legend alive for thousands of years. The story of Atlantis originates from one of the most influential philosophers in Western history, Plato. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BCE, Plato introduced the world to the idea of Atlantis, a vast, powerful island civilization that existed over 9,000 years before his time. According to Plato, Atlantis was situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar, marking the boundary between the Mediterranean Sea and the vast Atlantic Ocean. Plato described Atlantis as a highly advanced society, rich in resources and knowledge, with a mighty empire that extended its influence far beyond its borders. The Atlanteans were said to possess unparalleled technology and wisdom, making them a formidable force in the ancient world. However, their greatness was not to last. According to Plato, the Atlanteans grew increasingly corrupt and power-hungry, eventually falling out of favor with the gods. As punishment, Atlantis was destroyed in a single day and night of catastrophic events, sinking beneath the waves and disappearing forever. But why did Plato write about Atlantis? Scholars have long debated whether Atlantis was a real place or merely a fictional allegory created by Plato to convey philosophical ideas. Some suggest that Plato used the story of Atlantis to illustrate the dangers of hubris and the moral decay that can accompany great power. Others believe that he was drawing on older stories from Egyptian or other ancient sources, using them as a foundation for his own narrative. Regardless of its origins, the story of Atlantis has endured, captivating the imagination of countless generations and inspiring a seemingly endless search for the truth behind the legend. The tale of Atlantis, a story of a lost world of immense beauty, knowledge, and power, has captivated imaginations for over 2,000 years, symbolizing both the height of human achievement and a cautionary reminder of the impermanence of even the greatest civilizations. This timeless mystery, which challenges us to explore the fragility of civilization and the enduring power of myths, continues to resonate today, inviting us to search for answers and find meaning in the unknown. As we delve into this legendary tale, let the mystery of Atlantis guide you into a peaceful slumber. In the ancient world, where myths and reality often intertwined. Plato's account of Atlantis stands out as one of the most intriguing narratives ever written. Through his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, Plato invites us to envision a civilization that existed long before the rise of the Greek and Roman empires. Atlantis, according to Plato, was an island of unparalleled splendor and power, a beacon of human achievement that ultimately met a tragic fate. Plato begins the tale with a description of Atlantis as a vast and prosperous island located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the natural boundary between the known Mediterranean world and the uncharted Atlantic Ocean. The island was said to be larger than Libya and Asia combined, a land of abundance and wealth. The Atlanteans, its inhabitants, were described as a people of great intelligence, strength, and virtue, possessing advanced knowledge in engineering, architecture, and governance. They built magnificent cities, established a powerful navy, and ruled over many parts of the known world. Central to Plato's account is the notion of balance, both within the Atlantean society and in their relationship with the natural world. The island was rich in natural resources, with fertile plains, abundant water, and valuable minerals. The Atlanteans lived in harmony with their environment, respecting the land that provided them with their wealth and power. This balance, however, was not to last. As the story unfolds, Plato reveals that the Atlanteans began to lose their moral compass. Their once virtuous society fell into corruption, driven by greed and the desire for domination. The Atlanteans, who once ruled wisely and justly, became tyrannical and oppressive, seeking to conquer other lands by force. This moral decline ultimately led to their downfall, as the gods, displeased with the Atlanteans' hubris, decided to punish them. In a single day and night, Atlantis was consumed by catastrophic natural events. Earthquakes shook the island, and the sea rose to engulf it, leaving nothing behind but the legend. For Plato, the story of Atlantis served as a powerful allegory, illustrating the dangers of excess and the inevitable consequences of moral decay. Yet, even as an allegory, the story raises questions that continue to intrigue us. Was Atlantis a real place? And if so, could its ruins still lie hidden beneath the ocean's depths? As we move deeper into the story of Atlantis, we leave behind Plato's philosophical musings and begin to explore the world that might have been, the geographic and cultural setting of this legendary civilization. Imagine a world where the boundaries of known lands extended far beyond what ancient explorers could map. Atlantis, as described by Plato, lay beyond the familiar waters of the Mediterranean, nestled in the vast and mysterious Atlantic Ocean. This island was a paradise, a land blessed by the gods with everything a civilization could desire. Its fertile plains stretched as far as the eye could see, irrigated by a complex network of canals that crisscrossed the landscape, providing nourishment for crops and water for its people. The capital city of Atlantis was a marvel of engineering and beauty. Built around a central hill where the royal palace stood, the city was designed in a series of concentric circles, each separated by wide, navigable waterways. The innermost ring housed the magnificent temple of Poseidon, the god of the sea, who was believed to be the protector and progenitor of the Atlantean people. The temple was adorned with gold, silver, and orichalcum, a mysterious metal that gleamed with a reddish hue, said to be more valuable than gold. This sacred space was where the Atlanteans came to honor their gods, offering sacrifices and paying tribute to the divine forces that they believed had granted them their prosperity. Beyond the city lay the vast plains, fertile and well cultivated, supporting a thriving agricultural economy. The Atlanteans grew an abundance of crops, including fruits, grains, and vegetables, which not only sustained the population but also contributed to their wealth through trade with other nations. Their knowledge of irrigation and land management was unparalleled, allowing them to harness the natural resources of their island to the fullest. Culturally, Atlantis was a melting pot of influences. The Atlanteans were said to have connections with the great civilizations of Egypt, Greece, and beyond. They were skilled in the arts and sciences, and their knowledge extended into areas that, even by modern standards, would be considered advanced. From mathematics to astronomy, from medicine to architecture, the Atlanteans were masters of their craft. Their society was organized into a well-defined hierarchy, with a king at the top, supported by a council of wise and just rulers who governed the various regions of the island. The island's strategic location allowed the Atlanteans to become powerful seafarers, establishing colonies and extending their influence across the known world. Their navy was unmatched, their ships capable of crossing vast distances with ease. Through these voyages, the Atlanteans came into contact with other cultures, trading goods and knowledge, and spreading their influence far and wide. However, this geographic and cultural richness also sowed the seeds of their eventual downfall. As we continue to unravel the story of Atlantis, we will explore how the very elements that made Atlantis great ultimately contributed to its destruction, leading to a decline from which there was no return. At the heart of Atlantis's legendary civilization were its people, a society whose virtues and achievements were as remarkable as the land they inhabited. The Atlanteans were a race blessed not only with physical strength and resilience, but also with intellectual prowess and a deep connection to the natural and spiritual worlds. They were said to be descendants of the god Poseidon and a mortal woman, Cleito, and it was from this divine lineage that they derived their wisdom and strength. The people of Atlantis lived in harmony with their surroundings, drawing from the abundant resources of their island with a respect that was both practical and spiritual. They believed in a balance between their needs and the gifts of the earth, a philosophy that was reflected in their way of life. The Atlanteans were skilled farmers, architects, and engineers, using their knowledge to build a society that was both prosperous and sustainable. Their cities were marvels of urban planning, their fields lush with crops, and their seas teeming with ships that carried the wealth of Atlantis to far-flung shores. Education and knowledge were highly valued in Atlantean society. From a young age, children were taught not only the practical skills needed to thrive, but also the arts, sciences, and philosophy. The Atlanteans believed that wisdom was the foundation of a just society, and they took great pride in their intellectual achievements. Their scholars studied the stars, mapped the seas, and delved into the mysteries of the natural world. It was this pursuit of knowledge that fueled their advancements in technology and governance, allowing Atlantis to flourish as a beacon of enlightenment in a world still shrouded in mystery. Socially, the Atlanteans were organized into a hierarchical structure, with a ruling king at the top, supported by a council of nobles and wise men who governed the different regions of the island. Despite this hierarchy, their society was marked by a sense of fairness and justice. Laws were crafted to ensure that power was balanced with responsibility, and rulers were expected to act with the welfare of the people in mind. This emphasis on justice and wisdom, inherited from their divine ancestry, was what initially set the Atlanteans apart as a people of great moral integrity. However, as with all human endeavors, this golden age was not immune to the corrupting influences of power and greed. Over time, the virtues that had defined Atlantean society began to erode. The once noble rulers grew ambitious, their thirst for conquest overshadowing their commitment to justice. The people, too, became ensnared by the temptations of wealth and power, leading to a moral decline that would set the stage for their eventual downfall. Yet the memory of the Atlanteans as a people of great wisdom and strength persists, a reminder of both the heights that humanity can achieve and the perils that come with losing sight of our higher ideals. As we reflect on their story, we are also invited to consider the deeper questions about the nature of civilization and the forces that shape our destiny. The story of Atlantis has fascinated scholars, explorers, and dreamers for centuries, yet its existence remains one of the most enduring mysteries in human history. Was Atlantis a real place, a powerful empire that once thrived and then vanished beneath the waves? Or was it merely a figment of Plato's imagination, a philosophical allegory meant to convey deeper truths about human nature and society? From the moment Plato's dialogues were penned, the debate over Atlantis' existence began. Some ancient scholars, including Aristotle, dismissed the tale as fiction, a story invented by Plato to illustrate his ideas about the ideal state and the consequences of moral decay. According to this view, Atlantis was never intended to be taken literally, but rather as a metaphor for the dangers of hubris and the inevitable downfall of corrupt civilizations. Others, however, have been more inclined to believe that there is a kernel of truth in Plato's account. They argue that the detailed descriptions of Atlantis, its location, its geography, its culture, suggest that Plato might have based his story on real events or places known to ancient peoples. Some scholars have speculated that Atlantis could have been inspired by the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete, which was devastated by a massive volcanic eruption around 1600 BCE. Others suggest connections to the ancient city of Troy, or even to a lost civilization that once existed in the Atlantic Ocean, now buried beneath the sea. In more recent times, the quest to find Atlantis has taken on a new dimension. Explorers and researchers have scoured the globe, from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, in search of evidence that could prove the existence of this legendary city. Advanced technologies, such as satellite imaging and underwater exploration, have been employed to scan the ocean floor for signs of submerged ruins. Yet, despite these efforts, no definitive proof has been found, leaving the mystery of Atlantis unresolved. This uncertainty has only added to the allure of Atlantis, allowing it to occupy a unique space in the collective imagination. For some, the lack of concrete evidence strengthens the argument that Atlantis was a fictional creation, a cautionary tale crafted by Plato to warn future generations. For others, the absence of proof is merely a challenge, a call to continue searching for a lost world that, if found, could rewrite history as we know it. As we ponder the mystery of Atlantis, we are reminded of the power of myths and the role they play in shaping our understanding of the world. Whether Atlantis was real or imagined, its story continues to captivate us, inviting us to explore the boundaries between fact and fiction, reality and myth. And as we journey further into the tale, we are left to wonder, what if the legend of Atlantis holds more truth than we dare to believe? As we journey deeper into the tale of Atlantis, We move from the origins and mystery surrounding this legendary civilization to its most glorious period, the Golden Age. This was a time when Atlantis stood as a beacon of human achievement, a city of wonders that embodied the heights of culture, technology, and wisdom. Yet, as we explore this era of splendor, the seeds of its eventual downfall are already sown, hidden beneath the surface of its remarkable success. In its golden age, Atlantis was more than just a powerful empire. It was a marvel of engineering and architecture, a city that inspired awe in all who beheld it. Imagine standing on the shores of this vast island, gazing upon the capital city that stretched out before you, a vision of beauty and grandeur unlike anything else in the ancient world. The city of Atlantis was built in a series of concentric circles, each ring separated by wide, navigable canals that gleamed under the sun. These waterways were not just practical, allowing for easy transport of goods and people, but also symbolic, representing the harmony and order that the Atlanteans strived to maintain in their society. At the very heart of the city stood the royal palace, a towering structure that served as both the political and spiritual center of Atlantis. This palace was a masterpiece of design, adorned with the finest materials, gold, silver, and the mysterious orichalcum that reflected the light and gave the entire city a golden hue. Surrounding the palace was the Temple of Poseidon, the god who was said to have founded Atlantis and protected its people. The temple was a place of worship and reverence, its walls covered in intricate carvings that depicted the gods and the history of Atlantis. The central statue of Poseidon, riding his chariot pulled by 6 winged horses, was made of pure gold, and its majesty was said to be unparalleled. Here, the Atlanteans would gather to offer sacrifices, seeking the favor of the gods who had blessed them with such abundance. Beyond the sacred spaces, the city buzzed with activity. Markets were filled with traders from distant lands, bringing goods that reflected the vast reach of Atlantean influence. The streets were lined with buildings that demonstrated the advanced engineering skills of the Atlanteans, multi-storied homes, public baths, and vast amphitheaters where citizens would gather for both entertainment and civic engagement. The infrastructure was supported by a complex network of bridges and roads, all meticulously planned to ensure the smooth functioning of the city. The harbor of Atlantis was another marvel. It was designed to accommodate the large fleet of ships that represented the might of the Atlantean Navy. These ships, built with the finest materials and the most advanced techniques, were the pride of Atlantis, capable of navigating the vast oceans with ease. The harbor itself was fortified with towering walls and impressive defenses, a testament to the military prowess of the Atlanteans. Yet, despite the grandeur of the city and the power it projected, there was a sense of balance that permeated every aspect of life in Atlantis. The splendor of the city was not just a reflection of wealth and power, but of a society that, at its core, valued harmony, order, and the pursuit of knowledge. This balance was the foundation upon which Atlantis was built, a foundation that would, however, become increasingly fragile as the Atlanteans drifted further from their original virtues. As we move beyond the physical splendor of Atlantis, we begin to explore the way of life that defined this remarkable civilization. It is here, in the everyday lives of the Atlanteans, that we find the true essence of their society, a way of life that was as advanced as it was harmonious. Beneath the golden towers and majestic temples of Atlantis lay a society that was, in many ways, ahead of its time. The Atlanteans had mastered not only the physical world through their architecture and engineering, but also the art of living in harmony with one another and with nature. Their way of life was a reflection of the values that had once made Atlantis great: wisdom, justice, and a deep respect for the natural world. The Atlanteans lived in a society that was meticulously organized, with a clear hierarchy that ensured order and stability. At the top were the rulers, wise and just leaders who governed not through fear, but through a deep understanding of the needs of their people. These rulers were selected not merely for their lineage, but for their knowledge and virtue, qualities that were highly prized in Atlantean society. They were expected to embody the principles of fairness and wisdom, acting as guardians of both the people and the land. For the everyday Atlantean, life was rich with purpose and community. Agriculture was central to their way of life, and the Atlanteans were master farmers who knew how to cultivate the land in a sustainable way. The fertile plains of Atlantis were a testament to their knowledge, producing abundant crops that ensured no one went hungry. They also understood the importance of trade, and their markets were filled with goods from across the world, brought by the great ships that sailed from Atlantis's harbors. Education was another cornerstone of Atlantean life. From a young age, children were taught not only the practical skills they would need to thrive, but also the arts, sciences, and philosophy. The Atlanteans believed that a well-rounded education was essential for the development of both the individual and the society as a whole. Schools and academies dotted the landscape, places where knowledge was shared and passed down through the generations. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Atlantean society was their relationship with the natural world. The Atlanteans viewed themselves as stewards of the earth, responsible for maintaining the balance between human needs and the environment. They practiced sustainable farming, managed their resources wisely, and built their cities in harmony with the natural landscape. This respect for nature was not just a practical consideration, but a spiritual one, deeply embedded in their beliefs and practices. However, as time passed, these values began to erode. The simplicity and harmony that had once defined Atlantean life gradually gave way to ambition and excess. The leaders, once wise and just, grew more concerned with power and wealth, while the people became increasingly focused on material success. This shift marked the beginning of a slow decline, a journey away from the ideals that had made Atlantis great. As we continue our exploration of Atlantis, we will see how this decline took root, leading the civilization down a path from which there would be no return. But for now, let us hold on to the memory of Atlantis at its peak, a society that, for a time, achieved a level of harmony and splendor that has remained unmatched in the annals of history. In the realm of knowledge and technology, the Atlanteans were unparalleled. Their advancements were a testament to the intellectual rigor and curiosity that permeated their society, pushing the boundaries of what was known and possible. At a time when many civilizations were still grappling with basic survival, the Atlanteans had mastered the art of harnessing nature's power to elevate their way of life. One of the most impressive aspects of Atlantean technology was their mastery of engineering. The canals and bridges that connected their concentric cities were not only feats of architectural brilliance, but also reflected their deep understanding of hydraulics and fluid dynamics. These waterways, which supported both commerce and agriculture, were carefully designed to prevent flooding and ensure a steady supply of fresh water to the city. The Atlanteans had developed advanced irrigation systems that allowed them to cultivate their fertile plains year-round, ensuring that the island's population was well-fed and prosperous. Their knowledge of metallurgy was equally advanced. The mysterious orichalcum, a metal said to be more valuable than gold, was mined and crafted into tools, ornaments, and even the walls of their temples. The process of extracting and refining this metal was a closely guarded secret, passed down through generations of skilled craftsmen. This technological prowess extended to their naval capabilities as well. The Atlanteans built ships that were not only fast and durable, but also capable of long voyages across the vast oceans, enabling them to explore and trade with distant lands. The Atlanteans were also pioneers in the study of the natural world. Their scholars were adept in the fields of astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. They had mapped the stars with astonishing precision, using this knowledge not only for navigation, but also to develop complex calendars that guided their agricultural and religious practices. Their understanding of the human body and medicine allowed them to treat diseases that were considered incurable in other parts of the world, contributing to the health and longevity of their people. But with all this knowledge came a sense of pride that began to overshadow the humility with which the Atlanteans had once approached their world. As their technological and intellectual achievements grew, so too did their belief in their own invincibility. They began to see themselves as the masters of not just their own destiny, but of the world itself, a belief that would ultimately lead them down a perilous path. As we shift our focus from the technological achievements of Atlantis to the moral code that once guided its people, we see how these very advancements, when coupled with unchecked ambition, started to erode the principles that had made Atlantis great. At the core of Atlantis's initial greatness was a moral code that emphasized balance, justice, and a deep respect for both the divine and the natural world. This code was not just a set of laws, but a guiding philosophy that influenced every aspect of Atlantean life, from governance to daily interactions. It was this adherence to high moral standards that had, in the early days, allowed Atlantis to flourish as a beacon of wisdom and virtue. The moral code of Atlantis was rooted in the belief that true power came not from domination, but from living in harmony with others and with the environment. The rulers of Atlantis, chosen for their wisdom and integrity, were expected to govern with fairness, ensuring that justice was accessible to all. The laws of the land were crafted to promote equity and to prevent the accumulation of excessive wealth and power by a few individuals. These laws were enforced with a sense of duty, not by force, and the rulers led by example, embodying the virtues they espoused. The spiritual aspect of Atlantean life was also deeply intertwined with their moral code. The Atlanteans believed that they were chosen by the gods to be the stewards of their land, and they took this responsibility seriously. Regular rituals and ceremonies were held in the temples, where offerings were made to the gods in gratitude for the blessings they had received. The Atlanteans were taught from a young age that their prosperity was a gift, one that could be taken away if they strayed from the path of righteousness. However, as the wealth and power of Atlantis grew, the moral code that had once guided its people began to fray. The rulers, who were once paragons of virtue, started to indulge in the very excesses they had been chosen to guard against. The sense of community and shared responsibility that had defined Atlantean society gave way to individual ambition and greed. The connection with the divine, once a source of humility and balance, was increasingly seen as a tool for maintaining power. As the moral foundation of Atlantis crumbled, so too did the civilization that had been built upon it. The principles that had once elevated Atlantis to greatness were gradually abandoned, setting the stage for the tragic events that would soon unfold. As we move away from the golden days of Atlantis, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment in its history, a time when the seeds of decay, sown during the height of its power, began to take root. The virtues that once defined this great civilization slowly gave way to ambition, greed, and the pursuit of unchecked power. It is here, in the twilight of Atlantis's glory, that we witness the beginning of the end. The decline of Atlantis did not happen overnight. It was a gradual process, marked by subtle changes that, at first, went unnoticed. The Atlanteans, who had once prided themselves on their balance and harmony, began to drift away from the principles that had made their society thrive. This shift was not immediately apparent, but like a slow-moving storm gathering on the horizon, it would eventually unleash devastation. The first signs of trouble emerged as the rulers of Atlantis, once revered for their wisdom and justice, started to prioritize power over principle. Their focus shifted from governing for the common good to expanding their influence and control. The vast resources and advanced technology that had once been used to benefit the entire society were increasingly redirected toward military endeavors and territorial expansion. The rulers, blinded by their own success, believed that their destiny was to conquer and dominate, rather than to lead with wisdom and fairness. This change in leadership was mirrored in the attitudes of the people. The citizens of Atlantis, who had once lived in harmony with their environment and each other, began to adopt a more individualistic mindset. The communal spirit that had defined Atlantean life was slowly eroded by a growing emphasis on personal wealth and status. The temples that had once been filled with sincere worshippers became places where the elite flaunted their wealth, using religious ceremonies as opportunities to display their opulence rather than to seek the favor of the gods. As the moral fabric of Atlantis unraveled, so too did the social structures that had held the civilization together. Corruption began to seep into the government, with officials more concerned with enriching themselves than with serving the people. Justice, once the cornerstone of Atlantean society, became increasingly elusive as those in power manipulated the laws to serve their own ends. The once clear lines between right and wrong blurred, and the ethical principles that had guided Atlantis for centuries were gradually abandoned. Yet even as these changes took hold, there was a sense of denial among the people. The achievements of Atlantis were so great, its power so vast, that many believed their civilization was invincible. They could not imagine that the very foundations of their society were being eroded from within, and that the path they were on would lead to their downfall. But as the storm clouds continued to gather, the stage was set for a tragedy that would engulf the entire civilization. With the moral compass of Atlantis skewed and its leaders consumed by the pursuit of power, the forces that had once held the society together began to unravel. In the following years, the greed and ambition of the Atlanteans would drive them toward actions that would ultimately seal their fate. As the decline of Atlantis deepened, the once great civilization became increasingly consumed by greed and the pursuit of power. The leaders, intoxicated by their successes, sought to expand their empire beyond the boundaries of their island, believing that their dominion should stretch across the known world. What had once been a society grounded in balance and wisdom now embarked on a path of conquest and domination, forsaking the principles that had once guided them. The Atlanteans' desire for power was insatiable. They began to wage wars against neighboring lands, using their advanced technology and military might to subjugate other civilizations. The Atlantean navy, once a symbol of exploration and trade, became a formidable weapon of war. Their ships, which had once sailed the seas in pursuit of knowledge and commerce, now carried armies bent on conquest. The resources of Atlantis were increasingly diverted to fuel these wars, as the rulers sought to expand their territory and assert their dominance over other peoples. But as Atlantis grew in power, so too did its corruption. The wealth that flowed into the island from its conquests only served to exacerbate the moral decay that had already taken root. The rulers, who had once been chosen for their wisdom and virtue, became obsessed with maintaining and expanding their power. They surrounded themselves with sycophants and advisors who told them what they wanted to hear, rather than what they needed to know. The decisions they made were no longer guided by the welfare of their people, but by their own ambition and greed. This corruption was not limited to the ruling class. It spread throughout Atlantean society, as the pursuit of wealth and power became the primary motivation for many. The citizens, who had once lived in a society where fairness and justice were paramount, now found themselves in a world where might made right. The old values of honesty, humility, and community were replaced by a ruthless competition for status and influence. The temples, once places of worship and reflection, became arenas for displays of wealth and power, as the rich and powerful sought to outdo one another in their offerings to the gods. But the gods, it seemed, were no longer listening. The spiritual connection that had once been the bedrock of Atlantean society was eroded by the very excesses that had corrupted its people. The rituals and ceremonies that had once been performed with reverence and devotion became hollow, their meaning lost in the pursuit of material gain. The Atlanteans had turned their backs on the values that had once made them great, and in doing so, they had set themselves on a course toward destruction. As greed and power took hold, the soul of Atlantis withered. The civilization that had once been a beacon of wisdom and virtue was now a shadow of its former self, driven by forces that would ultimately lead to its downfall. The storm that had been brewing on the horizon was now on the verge of breaking, and the Atlanteans, blinded by their own ambition, were powerless to stop it. The people of Atlantis, who had once lived in prosperity, began to feel the effects of their leaders' ambitions. The infrastructure that had once been the pride of Atlantis started to deteriorate, and the once thriving markets and farms fell into neglect. Amidst this growing turmoil, the natural world itself seemed to turn against Atlantis. The fertile plains that had once yielded abundant crops began to suffer from droughts and floods. Earthquakes, once rare, became more frequent, shaking the very foundations of the great city. The signs were clear. Atlantis was on the brink of disaster. But even as the cracks in their society widened, the rulers of Atlantis refused to change course. They were blinded by their own hubris, convinced that their power and wealth would see them through any challenge. Throughout the final years of Atlantis, there were numerous signs and warnings that, had they been heeded, might have averted the impending catastrophe. The first warnings came from within the halls of power. Advisors and scholars, those who still held on to the old values of wisdom and caution, began to speak out against the direction in which Atlantis was headed. They warned that the relentless pursuit of power and wealth was leading the civilization down a dangerous path, one that could not be sustained. Even more ominous were the warnings from the natural world. The once stable environment of Atlantis began to show signs of instability. The ground trembled with increasing frequency, and the seas, once calm and predictable, began to show signs of unrest. Priests and seers, attuned to the spiritual and natural world, interpreted these signs as omens of impending disaster. They urged the rulers to turn back to the old ways, to restore balance and harmony to the land and its people. The final warnings came in the form of dreams and visions, experienced by those with a deeper connection to the divine. These visions depicted the destruction of Atlantis, its great city submerged beneath the waves, its people lost to the depths of the ocean. These prophetic dreams were shared with the rulers, who were urged to take them seriously, to change course before it was too late. In their hubris, the rulers of Atlantis believed that their civilization was invincible, that nothing could bring about their downfall. They had ignored the warnings that had come from every corner of their society, from the wise, the spiritual, and the natural world itself. And in doing so, they had sealed their fate. The stage was now set for the final catastrophic events that would bring Atlantis to its knees. The storm that had been gathering on the horizon was about to break, and the once great civilization of Atlantis would soon be no more. As the story of Atlantis reaches its tragic climax, we find ourselves at the moment when the long-ignored warnings finally manifest in a series of cataclysmic events. These disasters, foretold by the prophets and hinted at by the natural world, were now unavoidable. The once great civilization, weakened by its own hubris and moral decay, was about to face the ultimate test. The first of these devastating events was a great earthquake, one that would shake the very foundations of Atlantis and herald the beginning of the end. It began as a subtle tremor, barely noticeable to those going about their daily lives in the bustling city of Atlantis. The ground, which had always felt so solid beneath their feet, suddenly seemed to shift ever so slightly. But the people, preoccupied with their own concerns and confident in the stability of their world, paid little attention to this initial warning. The tremor passed, and life continued as usual. But this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, the tremors became more frequent, each one slightly stronger than the last. The people of Atlantis began to feel a growing sense of unease, but the rulers, still blinded by their hubris, assured them that there was nothing to fear. They believed that their great city, with its advanced technology and powerful defenses, was impervious to the forces of nature. The priests and seers who had warned of this moment were dismissed as alarmists, their voices drowned out by the assurances of those in power. Then, without warning, the ground beneath Atlantis erupted in a violent convulsion. The earth heaved and buckled as a massive earthquake tore through the island, shattering the once solid ground and reducing the grand buildings of Atlantis to rubble. The city that had stood for centuries, a testament to human achievement, was now a scene of chaos and destruction. The quake was unlike anything the Atlanteans had ever experienced. Entire neighborhoods were swallowed by massive fissures that opened up in the earth, while others were buried under the debris of collapsing buildings. The Great Palace, once the center of power and authority, was reduced to ruins in a matter of moments. The temples, where the people had once gathered to worship and seek guidance from the gods, were left in ruins, their golden statues toppled and shattered. Panic spread through the streets as the magnitude of the disaster became clear. The once orderly city was now a landscape of chaos, with people running in every direction, seeking shelter from the collapsing structures and the quaking ground. The canals, once the lifeblood of the city, overflowed as the earth shifted, sending torrents of water rushing through the streets, sweeping away everything in their path. In the midst of the devastation, the once proud rulers of Atlantis found themselves powerless. The very forces of nature that they had believed they could control were now tearing their world apart. Their wealth, their armies, their advanced technology, all were useless against the raw power of the earthquake. As the ground continued to shake and heave, they realized, too late, that they had underestimated the wrath of the gods and the fragility of their civilization. But the earthquake was not merely a physical event. It was a symbolic one as well. It represented the collapse of everything that Atlantis had once stood for: its wisdom, its power, its pride. The very foundations of their society, both literal and metaphorical, were crumbling before their eyes. The balance that had once held their world together was now irrevocably lost, and with it, the hope of salvation. As the quake finally subsided, the survivors emerged from the rubble to find a world that had been irrevocably changed. The city they had known was gone, replaced by a landscape of destruction and despair. The once great civilization of Atlantis was now a shadow of its former self, its people broken, and its leaders humbled. But even as they struggled to comprehend the enormity of the disaster, they knew in their hearts that this was only the beginning. The great earthquake had set in motion a chain of events that could not be stopped, and the worst was yet to come. In the days following the great earthquake, the people of Atlantis were gripped by a deep sense of foreboding. The tremors had ceased, but the land itself seemed to have shifted, as if the very island was drifting away from the world it had once known. The once stable earth was now scarred with deep fissures, and the canals that had brought life to the city were clogged with debris. The skies above Atlantis, once clear and bright, were now overcast with dark, ominous clouds that seemed to press down upon the island, heavy with the promise of a coming storm. As the days turned into nights, the winds began to pick up, howling through the ruins of the city like a mournful dirge. The sea, once a source of wealth and sustenance for the Atlanteans, began to churn and rise. Waves that had once lapped gently at the shores now crashed against the coastline with increasing ferocity. The tides, driven by unseen forces, began to encroach further and further inland, flooding the low-lying areas of the city that had already been weakened by the earthquake. The people, sensing the danger, began to flee to higher ground, seeking refuge on the hills and mountains that dotted the island. But even as they climbed, the waters continued to rise, faster and higher than anyone could have anticipated. The rivers and canals that had once irrigated their fields and provided water for their homes now overflowed their banks, merging into a single unstoppable torrent that swept through the city, carrying away everything in its path. Panic set in as the full scale of the disaster became apparent. The seas were rising, and nothing could stop them. The great walls that had once protected Atlantis from invaders were no match for the fury of the ocean. As the floodwaters surged, they breached the walls with ease, pouring into the city from all sides. The once great harbor, where ships from all corners of the world had docked, was now a maelstrom of swirling waters and debris. Ships were torn from their moorings and smashed against the rocks, their remains scattered across the flooded streets. In the midst of the chaos, the survivors could only watch in horror as the waters continued to rise. Entire neighborhoods were submerged in minutes, their houses and temples disappearing beneath the waves. The palace, once a symbol of Atlantean power, was now an island unto itself, surrounded on all sides by the relentless tide. Those who had sought refuge within its walls soon found themselves trapped, the rising waters cutting off any means of escape. As the floodwaters reached the highest parts of the city, the people of Atlantis realized that there was no escape. The hills and mountains that had once seemed so safe were now little more than temporary refuges, their peaks growing smaller as the sea swallowed the island whole. The cries of those who had survived the earthquake now echoed across the water, mingling with the roar of the storm and the crashing of the waves. As the floodwaters continued to rise, covering the once great city in a relentless tide, the remaining survivors of Atlantis faced the grim reality that their world was coming to an end. Those who had managed to reach the highest peaks of the island watched in helpless despair as the last remnants of their civilization were swallowed by the sea. The temples, the palaces, the homes, everything that had once defined their lives was now submerged beneath the churning waters, leaving only memories behind. In these final moments, a somber silence fell over the island. The roar of the storm had begun to fade, replaced by the eerie stillness of a world on the brink of disappearance. The people, huddled together on the remaining patches of dry land, held on to one another, seeking comfort in the face of the inevitable. The once proud rulers of Atlantis, who had guided their people to such great heights, now stood powerless, their authority rendered meaningless in the face of nature's wrath. Some of the survivors, clinging to a last shred of hope, began to offer prayers to the gods who had once blessed their land with such abundance. They begged for mercy, for deliverance from the fate that had befallen them. But the gods, it seemed, had turned their backs on Atlantis. The very deities that the Atlanteans had once honored in grand temples and elaborate ceremonies were now silent, their temples reduced to rubble beneath the sea. As the waters reached the final, highest peaks, the survivors could do nothing but watch as the sea claimed the last vestiges of their world. The great palace, once the heart of Atlantean power, was now little more than a distant memory, its golden walls buried beneath the ocean's depths. The sacred groves and gardens that had once brought peace and tranquility to the people were now lost to the abyss, their beauty erased by the encroaching tide. In these last moments, there were no more illusions of grandeur, no more thoughts of power or conquest. All that remained was the stark reality of loss, the loss of a civilization, of a way of life, of a people who had once believed themselves invincible. The Atlanteans, who had once sought to conquer the world, were now facing the ultimate defeat, not at the hands of an enemy, but at the hands of the very earth and sea they had so long taken for granted. As the final patches of land were submerged and the last of the survivors were claimed by the waters, Atlantis breathed its last breath. The island, once a beacon of human achievement, was now gone, its people scattered to the winds or lost to the sea. The great civilization that had once stood at the pinnacle of the ancient world was no more, its story now relegated to the depths of the ocean and the annals of legend. Yet even as Atlantis disappeared beneath the waves, there was a sense that its legacy would not be so easily forgotten. The story of its rise and fall, of its achievements and its hubris, would be carried forward by those few who survived, by the sailors who passed by the site of the lost island, and by the storytellers who would one day weave its tale into the fabric of history. With the final submersion of Atlantis, the world was left in stunned silence. The island that had once been the heart of a powerful empire was now nothing more than a memory, its location obscured by the vast expanse of the ocean. Over time, the exact location of Atlantis faded from memory, becoming a subject of speculation and mystery. Some said it lay in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. Others believed it was hidden beneath the sands of the Mediterranean, and still others claimed it was a myth, a story invented to teach lessons about the dangers of hubris. But regardless of its physical location, the legend of Atlantis endured, taking on a life of its own in the imaginations of people across the world. The ocean that had swallowed Atlantis kept its secrets well. The ruins of the great city lay undisturbed beneath the waves, covered by layers of sediment and guarded by the depths of the sea. The story of Atlantis did not end with its submersion beneath the waves. Though the great civilization was lost to time, its memory persisted, carried forward by those who survived and by the storytellers who wove its tale into the fabric of history. The legend of Atlantis continued to evolve, inspiring generations of thinkers, explorers, and dreamers who sought to uncover the truth behind the myth. In this final section, we explore the enduring legacy of Atlantis, from its place in ancient history to the modern quest for its rediscovery and its lasting impact on culture. In the centuries following the destruction of Atlantis, the story of the lost civilization became a powerful and evocative tale within ancient cultures. The first accounts of Atlantis were passed down orally, their details shaped by the memories and interpretations of those who had survived the catastrophe. These early narratives, filled with awe and reverence, found their way into the broader tapestry of ancient mythology, where they took on new layers of meaning and symbolism. Plato, the great philosopher of ancient Greece, was the first to record the story of Atlantis in written form, embedding it within his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. For Plato, Atlantis served as more than just a historical account. It was an allegory, a moral tale that illustrated the dangers of hubris, the pitfalls of power, and the consequences of moral decay. Through his retelling, Atlantis became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations. Plato's account of Atlantis resonated deeply within the intellectual circles of the ancient world. Scholars, historians, and philosophers debated the origins and meaning of the tale, some viewing it as a true historical record, while others saw it as a metaphorical lesson. The story spread across the Mediterranean, influencing the myths and legends of other cultures, including the Egyptians, who had their own tales of great cities lost to the sands of time. As the centuries passed, the story of Atlantis was absorbed into the broader mythological traditions of the ancient world. It became associated with other tales of lost civilizations, such as the Greek legend of the Golden Age and the biblical story of the Great Flood. These connections further solidified Atlantis's place in the collective imagination, ensuring that the story would be remembered and retold long after the civilization itself had vanished. The legacy of Atlantis in ancient history is one of transformation and adaptation. What began as a specific account of a lost island nation became a symbol of the broader themes that preoccupied the ancient mind: power, morality, and the delicate balance between human ambition and the natural world. Atlantis, though lost, became immortalized in the stories and teachings that shaped the course of ancient history. The allure of Atlantis, with its promises of lost knowledge and hidden treasure, has captivated explorers, scholars, and adventurers for millennia. The search for the lost city has taken on many forms, from serious archaeological expeditions to speculative theories and imaginative quests, each driven by the desire to uncover the truth behind one of history's greatest mysteries. The first recorded searches for Atlantis began in the classical period, as ancient scholars and historians sought to locate the island described by Plato. Some believed that Atlantis was a real place, its ruins waiting to be discovered beneath the sea. Others thought it might be a metaphorical location, representing an idealized past or a warning about the future. These early efforts to locate Atlantis were often speculative, based more on philosophical interpretation than on physical evidence. During the Renaissance, interest in Atlantis was rekindled as explorers and scholars rediscovered the works of Plato and other ancient texts. The Age of Exploration, with its voyages to unknown lands and the discovery of new continents, fueled speculation that Atlantis might be found in the uncharted waters of the Atlantic or the Americas. The idea that a great ancient civilization could have existed beyond the known world resonated with the spirit of the time, and many believed that the discovery of Atlantis would reveal lost knowledge and untold riches. In the 19th and 20th centuries, the search for Atlantis became more scientific, with archaeologists, geologists, and oceanographers joining the quest. Advances in technology allowed for more thorough explorations of the ocean floor, leading to the discovery of submerged cities and ancient ruins in various parts of the world. These findings, while fascinating, did not provide conclusive evidence of Atlantis, but they kept the mystery alive, encouraging further exploration and study. Some theories have linked Atlantis to real historical events, such as the destruction of the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete, which was devastated by a volcanic eruption and subsequent tsunami around 1600 BCE. Others have suggested that Atlantis could be connected to the lost city of Troy, the island of Santorini, or even locations in the Caribbean or Antarctica. Each new theory adds to the richness of the legend, blending history, myth, and speculation in a way that continues to captivate the imagination. Despite the many searches, the exact location of Atlantis remains unknown, its existence still a subject of debate. The quest for Atlantis has become a symbol of the human desire to explore the unknown, to seek out lost worlds, and to uncover the mysteries of the past. Whether or not Atlantis is ever found, The search itself has become a journey that reflects our deepest hopes, fears, and curiosities about the world and our place in it. In modern times, the legend of Atlantis has transcended its origins in ancient philosophy and become a powerful symbol in popular culture. The story of the lost civilization, with its themes of technological prowess, moral decay, and catastrophic downfall, continues to resonate with audiences around the world. Atlantis has been reimagined and reinvented in countless ways, becoming a staple of literature, film, art, and even video games. The rediscovery of ancient texts during the Renaissance and the subsequent exploration of new lands helped to rekindle interest in Atlantis as a real historical place. This interest only grew as new technologies and scientific discoveries allowed for deeper explorations of the ocean floor, further fueling the imagination of writers, artists, and filmmakers. The story of Atlantis, with its blend of mystery and adventure, became a perfect canvas for creative expression. In literature, Atlantis has been depicted in a variety of ways, from utopian visions of a perfect society to dystopian warnings of the dangers of unchecked ambition. Writers such as Sir Francis Bacon, in his work The New Atlantis, and Jules Verne, in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, used the story of Atlantis to explore ideas about society, science, and the future. These works, and many others, helped to cement Atlantis's place in the literary canon as a symbol of human potential and peril. In film and television, Atlantis has been portrayed as everything from a lost paradise to an advanced alien civilization. Movies like Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and TV shows like Stargate Atlantis have brought the legend to life for new generations, blending science fiction, fantasy, and history in ways that continue to captivate audiences. These adaptations often emphasize the technological advancements of the Atlanteans, depicting them as a society that was both advanced and doomed by its own hubris. Atlantis has also become a popular theme in art and design, inspiring everything from elaborate paintings and sculptures to modern architecture and urban planning. The idea of a lost city beneath the sea, with its hidden treasures and ancient mysteries, has captured the imagination of artists around the world, leading to works that explore the beauty, tragedy, and enigma of the legend. In the digital age, Atlantis has found new life in video games and online communities, where the story is reimagined in interactive and immersive ways. Games like Assassin's Creed and Tomb Raider have used the legend of Atlantis as a backdrop for adventure and exploration, allowing players to dive into the mystery and uncover the secrets of the lost civilization. Today, Atlantis remains one of the most enduring myths in human history. Its story continues to evolve, reflecting the changing concerns and aspirations of each new generation. Whether as a cautionary tale, a symbol of lost knowledge, or a source of endless adventure, Atlantis has become a cultural touchstone that transcends time and place, reminding us of the fragile balance between power and wisdom, and the mysteries that still lie beneath the surface of our world. As we come to the close of this journey through the legend of Atlantis, it's time to reflect on the story we've unraveled, its mysteries, its lessons, and its enduring appeal. The myth of Atlantis is more than just a tale of a lost civilization. It's a mirror through which we can examine our own world, our own ambitions, and the delicate balance that holds our societies together. As we prepare to drift into a peaceful slumber, let's take a moment to reflect on the wisdom this ancient myth offers, and then bid a calming farewell to the world of Atlantis, now forever preserved in the depths of our dreams. The story of Atlantis is one of the most enduring and captivating myths in human history. From its origins in the writings of Plato to its place in modern culture, Atlantis has fascinated generations with its blend of historical intrigue, philosophical depth, and tragic downfall. But beyond the allure of a lost city and a sunken empire lies a deeper narrative, one that speaks to the universal themes of power, morality, and the consequences of human ambition. At its core, the myth of Atlantis serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dangers that come with unchecked power and the hubris that can lead even the greatest civilizations to their downfall. Atlantis was a society that reached unparalleled heights in knowledge, technology, and culture, yet it was these very achievements that sowed the seeds of its destruction. The story illustrates the delicate balance between human ambition and the natural world, showing us that when that balance is disrupted, the consequences can be catastrophic. The Legacy of Atlantis also invites us to reflect on the nature of memory and history. The details of the story have been lost and transformed over time, becoming a tapestry of myth, speculation, and interpretation. This evolution of the narrative mirrors the way in which human history itself is remembered and retold, shaped by the perspectives of those who pass it down, and colored by the cultural and philosophical contexts in which it is interpreted. Atlantis challenges us to consider the impermanence of even the most powerful societies. No matter how advanced or secure a civilization may seem, it is ultimately vulnerable to the forces of nature and the flaws inherent in human nature. The myth serves as a reminder that true strength lies not in domination or technological prowess, but in wisdom, humility, and the ability to live in harmony with the world around us. As we reflect on the myth of Atlantis, we are left with questions that are as relevant today as they were in ancient times. How do we balance the pursuit of progress with the need to protect our environment and preserve our moral integrity? How do we ensure that our achievements do not become the very things that lead to our downfall? And how do we learn from the past, even as we look forward to the future? These are the lessons that Atlantis offers us, lessons that, if heeded, can guide us toward a future where our civilizations thrive not through conquest, but through wisdom and respect for the world we inhabit. As we bring this journey through the legend of Atlantis to a close, it's time to let go of the stories and reflections we shared and allow ourselves to drift into a peaceful and restful sleep. The tale of Atlantis, with all its mysteries and lessons, has woven a rich tapestry in our minds, one that we can revisit in our dreams, where the ocean's depths hold not only secrets, but also serenity. Imagine now the waves gently lapping against the shores of the lost island, the remnants of a once great civilization lying quietly beneath the surface. The storm has passed, and the sea is calm once more. The ruins of Atlantis, though hidden from the world above, rest in stillness, embraced by the ocean's embrace. The story of its rise and fall, of its wisdom and its hubris, is now a part of the deep, a tale whispered by the currents and carried on the tides. Let your mind wander to that tranquil place beneath the waves, where time seems to slow and the worries of the day are washed away. The lessons of Atlantis, though profound, are now at peace, resting as gently as the sands that cover the ancient stones. In this place, there is no rush, no pressure, only the soft, rhythmic movement of the water, lulling you into a state of complete relaxation. As you lie here, listening to the sound of your own breath, feel the tension in your body begin to melt away. The weight of the day lifts, leaving you feeling light and free, as if you too are floating in the calm waters of the ocean. The thoughts that have occupied your mind now drift away like leaves on the surface of a still pond, leaving behind only a sense of deep, abiding peace. Now, as you prepare to surrender to sleep, imagine the gentle rocking of the waves, soothing and comforting, carrying you further into the depths of rest. The world above fades away, and you are left with the quiet serenity of the deep ocean, where Atlantis sleeps and where you too can find rest. With each breath, you sink deeper into relaxation, your body and mind becoming one with the peaceful rhythm of the sea. The story of Atlantis is now a distant echo, a gentle memory that lingers in the back of your mind, but does not disturb your rest. All that remains is the soothing, calming presence of the ocean, and the promise of a night filled with restful sleep. Good sleep, and may your dreams be as tranquil as the waters that now hold Atlantis, a place of peace, reflection, and quiet beauty, where the worries of the world cannot reach you. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time and mystery. We hope this story has brought you a sense of peace and perhaps even a bit of curiosity about the world's ancient secrets. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to join us again for more whispered tales, where the past and the present meet to bring you comfort and intrigue. Until then, may your dreams be filled with adventure and tranquility. Good night.